Sylvester Stallone, known to the world as Rocky Balboa, sat in his black Range Rover at an intersection in downtown Philadelphia. It was late autumn, April 10th, 2025, and a cold wind was pushing yellowed leaves across the sidewalks. He had just finished an interview for a local TV channel about his new charity project, gyms for youth from poor neighborhoods. His gray hair was neatly combed back, and his eyes still held that same spark that had once made him a legend. But something in the air felt different that evening. The traffic light turned red, and Sylvester looked out the window. On the corner stood a man dirty, wearing a torn army jacket, with a long gray beard hanging down to his chest. He held a cardboard sign, "Veteran," asking for $10 for food. His hands were trembling from the cold, and his eyes, though clouded with fatigue, seemed alive, as if still clinging to some hope. Sylvester frowned. He had seen such people hundreds of times, in Los Angeles, New York, even here in his hometown of Philadelphia. But this time, something about him struck a chord. The man noticed Sylvester's gaze and, frowning, approached the car. He tapped his bony fingers on the glass. Sylvester rolled down the window, and the smell of wet asphalt and cigarette smoke filled the car. "Sir, don't mind giving an old soldier $10, the man rasped. His voice was low and hoarse, but there was a hint of pride in it. "I don't drink, I swear. Just food." Sylvester looked at him more closely. The jacket had old patches, 101st Airborne Division. He knew that unit. His father had told him about those guys parachuting into the hell of war. But the man before him was no hero from the movies. He was a broken person, discarded by society. "What's your name?" Sylvester asked, pulling out his wallet. "Alec," the man replied, blinking in surprise. "Alec Harrison. $10, you say?" Sylvester pulled out a bill, but didn't hand it over immediately. "What did you do before you ended up here?" Alec frowned, as if the question had offended him. "I served 20 years. Iraq, Afghanistan. Came back, and there's no work. The pension's a joke. They took my home when the bank decided I wasn't worth their mortgage. That's how it is." Sylvester felt a pang in his chest. He knew veterans in America often ended up in such situations. The government promised support, but then forgot about them. In 2025, when political debates about social programs and the economy buzzed on every channel, the issue had become even sharper. Older people, like his neighbors or fans, often complained, "We pay taxes, but where does the money go? Not to those who deserve it." The traffic light turned green, and cars behind them honked. Sylvester waved them off and turned back to Alec. "Why ask me and not someone else?" he asked, testing his reaction. Alec snorted. "Because you look like someone who knows what struggle is. And you've got a car worth $100,000. I thought maybe you wouldn't mind." Sylvester smiled wryly. This guy still had some sharpness to him. He handed over the 10, but as Alec reached for it, Sylvester held his hand back. "What if I give you more than $10? What will you do with it?" Alec blinked, confused. "What do you mean?" "A chance," Sylvester said, his voice becoming firm, like Rocky before a fight. "I can pull you out of this, but I need to know you won't give up." Alec stepped back a pace, his eyes narrowing. "Are you some kind of philanthropist, or what? I don't need your pity." "This isn't pity," Sylvester cut him off. "It's respect. I see you're a fighter, but the fight's not out there." He tapped his head. "So what do you say?" Cars honked behind them again, but Sylvester didn't move. Alec stood there, clutching the sign in his hands, and his gaze wavered between distrust and something like hope. Finally, he exhaled. "If you're serious, I'm in, but I'm not promising it'll be easy." "It won't be easy," Sylvester replied, opening the passenger door. "Get in." Alec hesitated for a second, then tossed the sign onto the sidewalk and climbed into the car. The interior smelled of old clothes and street dust, but Sylvester didn't flinch. He knew this was just the beginning. When they drove off, Sylvester turned on the radio. Frank Sinatra's old song, "My Way," was playing. Alec glanced at him out of the corner of his eye. "Are you always this strange with strangers?" Only with those I like, Sylvester answered, keeping his eyes on the road. They stopped at a small cafe on the outskirts of the city. Inside, it smelled of freshly brewed coffee and hot donuts. The wooden tables were worn but clean, and an elderly waitress stood behind the counter with a warm smile. Sylvester ordered 2 coffees and a plate of sandwiches. Alex sat across from him, nervously clasping his hands. "Why are you doing this?" he asked when the food arrived. "I'm nobody to you." "You're a veteran," Sylvester answered, taking a bite of a sandwich. "My old man served too. He used to say soldiers don't get left behind. And I see they left you." Alec lowered his gaze to his cup. His fingers trembled as he brought it to his lips. "You have no idea what it's like to come back and realize nobody needs you. Employers look at you like you're a burden. Family, they're long gone. And politicians just keep promising." Sylvester nodded. He had heard this from many people, friends, fans, letters from others. In their 55-plus years, Americans often felt abandoned. The economy was growing, but not for them. Not for those who gave everything. "I can't change the system," he said. "But I can change your story. The question is, are you ready for that?" Alec raised his eyes. There was a spark in them. "What are you offering?" "To start, a roof over your head. Then work. Not handouts, but real work. But you have to prove you can do it." Alec pressed his lips together. "I don't want to be your project so you can feel better. And I don't want to be your savior," Sylvester shot back. "This is a partnership. You put in the effort, I give you the opportunity." The waitress brought more coffee, and the cafe fell silent. Only the old heater in the corner hummed. Alec was quiet for a long time, then nodded. "All right. But if you're joking, I'm out." "I'm not joking," Sylvester said, extending his hand. Alec shook it. His palm was rough, but his grip was firm. That night, Sylvester took Alec to a small guest house on the outskirts of the city. It was a modest cottage, wooden walls, the smell of pine resin, creaky floors. Sylvester left him with clean clothes, food in the fridge, and a note. "Tomorrow at 8 o'clock. Be ready." But the next morning, things didn't go as planned. When Sylvester arrived, the cottage door was open, and Alec was nowhere to be found. On the table lay a note. "Thanks, but I can't. Not your fault." Sylvester clenched his fists. He knew it would be hard, but he hadn't expected Alec to give up so quickly. He walked outside and saw his neighbor, an old farmer in overalls. "Did you see where my guest went?" Sylvester asked. "He left for the bus stop an hour ago," the farmer replied. "Looked scared." Sylvester got into his car and drove off to search. He knew this wasn't just an escape, it was a cry for help. And he wasn't about to give up. Sylvester sped his Range Rover through the narrow roads of the Philadelphia suburbs, scanning every corner. The sun had just risen over the horizon, casting a pale yellow light on the asphalt. The air smelled of damp earth and distant smoke from someone's fireplace. He turned on the radio, but the news, more debates about the budget and social program cuts, only irritated him. Sylvester turned it off and focused on the road. Alex was somewhere here, and he wasn't going to lose him. The bus stop was a few blocks away, an old metal bench under a peeling shelter. Sylvester stopped and got out of the car. There was only one person sitting on the bench, not Alex, but a skinny teenager with headphones, scrolling through his phone. Sylvester approached him. "Hey, have you seen a veteran around here?" "Gray beard, military jacket," he asked, trying to sound calm. The boy took one earbud out and glanced at him. "There's some old guy about an hour ago. Took a bus to the city center. Looked like he was running from someone." Sylvester nodded and turned back to the car. The city center, that meant the train station, shelters, or street corners where the homeless hide from the cold. He knew these places from a time when he was on the edge, before Rocky changed his life. But why did Alex run? What scared him? On the way to the center, Sylvester called his old friend, Tony Rico, who used to work for the Philadelphia police, and now ran a small security firm. "Tony, I need help," he said when Tony picked up. "Looking for a guy. A vet, Alex Harrison. Might be in the city center. Gray beard, military jacket." "Sly. You saving someone again? Tony laughed with his raspy voice. All right, I'll let my guys know. But what does he want from you? He doesn't want anything. I got him involved, Sylvester replied. Just find him. Tony promised to help, and Sylvester tossed the phone on the seat. He reached 30th Street Station, a huge building with tall columns and the smell of coffee from the kiosks in the station. People rushed to their trains, pulling suitcases, and in the corners, the hum of homeless people huddling by the ventilation grates. Sylvester walked around the platforms, scanning faces, but Alex was nowhere to be found. Then he noticed a group of men by the exit, 3 in old jackets, one of them holding a bottle in a paper bag. Sylvester moved closer. Have you seen a vet named Alex? Gray beard, 101st Division, he asked. One of the men, with sparse teeth and a red nose, looked at him. Maybe I did. What do you want with him? He's my friend, Sylvester answered firmly. The man snorted. Your friend was here this morning. Asked where he could sell an old medal. Said he needed money to get out of town. Went to a pawn shop on Market Street. Sylvester felt a chill in his chest. A medal? Alex hadn't mentioned it yesterday, but it could be something important, the last link to his past. He thanked the man and ran back to the car. The pawn shop on Market Street was small, with dusty windows displaying old clocks and guitars. A bell rang above the door when Sylvester entered. Behind the counter stood a bald man in a sweater, cleaning a coin. Did you see a vet with a medal? Sylvester asked, getting straight to the point. The man looked up. Yeah, about 20 minutes ago. Brought in a Purple Heart. Said he urgently needed money. I gave him $100, but he left mumbling something about a bus to Baltimore. Sylvester clenched his fists. You bought his medal? What else was I supposed to do? He offered it himself. The man shrugged. Show it to me, Sylvester said, his voice low and threatening. The shopkeeper pulled out a small box from a drawer. Inside was the medal, worn but with a clear inscription, for valor. Sylvester took it in his hands and felt its weight. It wasn't just an award, it was a story that Alex had tried to erase. I'm taking this, Sylvester said, pulling $200 from his wallet. And if he comes back, tell him Slice looking for him. The shopkeeper nodded, clearly scared by Sylvester's tone. Outside, Sylvester got in the car and called Tony. He's heading to Baltimore. Check the bus stations. Sly, are you sure he's worth it? Tony asked. A lot of those guys just don't want to be saved. He's not one of those guys, Sylvester snapped. He's Alex. And I'm not leaving him. While Tony gave instructions to his guys, Sylvester drove to the Greyhound bus station in the city center. It was crowded, families with children, students with backpacks, a few homeless people begging for change. He walked through the hall, scanning the crowd, and suddenly heard a familiar raspy voice. I told you, get the hell off me. Sylvester turned. Around the corner, Alex was swatting away 2 young men in leather jackets. One of them was holding a knife, and the other was pushing Alex against the wall. Give us the money, old man, or you'll regret it, the one with the knife shouted. Sylvester didn't hesitate. He quickly approached, grabbed the knife-wielding hand, and twisted it with one movement, an old trick from fight scenes. The young man screamed and dropped the weapon. The other rushed at Sylvester, but he shoved him aside with a shoulder strike. Get out of here, Sylvester said quietly, but in a way that sent chills down their spines. The young men backed off, muttering curses, and disappeared into the crowd. Alex stood there, breathing heavily, looking at Sylvester with a mix of anger and shame. What are you doing here? He croaked. Because you ran, Sylvester replied, pulling out the medal from his pocket. And you left this behind. Alex paled when he saw the Purple Heart. You bought it back. Yeah, and I want to know why you sold it, Sylvester said, his gaze firm but not judgmental. Alex looked away. Because I can't carry it anymore. Everything I was. It's dead. I don't want your house, your job. I'm not worthy of it. Sylvester stepped closer. You sold the medal to run away. But from what? From me or from yourself? Alex stayed silent, his hands trembling. Finally, he looked up. from everything. I don't believe I can come back. Not after what I've lost. Sylvester placed a hand on his shoulder. You haven't lost yourself. You've just forgotten where to look. And I'm not going to let you give up. Alex stepped back, his face twisted. You don't understand. I'm not the hero from your movie. I'm broken. And you can't fix me. He turned and ran towards the buses, pushing people out of his way. Sylvester chased after him, but the crowd closed around Alex. He stopped, breathing heavily, and realized this wasn't a movie where the hero always wins. But he wasn't going to give up. Then Tony called. Sly, my guys saw him by the bus to Baltimore. He's getting on right now. Thanks, Tony, Sylvester said, and ran to the car. The bus was already pulling away when Sylvester reached the platform. He saw Alex sitting by the window, staring into emptiness. Sylvester knew he wouldn't be able to stop the bus in time, but he wasn't going to give up. He got in his car and started following him. The drive to Baltimore would take 2 hours, enough time to come up with a plan. But what would happen when he caught up to Alex? Could he convince him? Would Alex run again? And what was hiding in his past that made him so afraid of hope? Sylvester drove his Range Rover down the I-95 highway toward Baltimore, keeping the bus with Alex in his sight. The engine hummed, the asphalt flashed beneath the wheels, and the cabin smelled of leather and coffee from the paper cup he'd grabbed at the station. The sun had risen higher, painting the sky in golden pink hues, but Sylvester didn't notice the beauty. His thoughts were focused on the person sitting in that bus, separated from the world by glass and his own pain. He knew that simply catching up to Alex wasn't enough. The man wasn't running from him, he was running from himself. And if Sylvester wanted to bring him back, it wouldn't take orders or strength, but something deeper. He turned on the radio, and an old Bruce Springsteen song poured out, Born to Run. Sylvester smiled at the corner of his mouth. Right, Bruce, we're all born to run. But where to? An hour and a half later, the bus stopped at the Baltimore bus station. Sylvester parked nearby and watched the passengers disembark. There was Alex, wearing his tattered jacket, head down, slowly making his way toward the exit. Sylvester got out of the car, holding the Purple Heart in his hand, and followed him, keeping a distance. Alex entered a small park near the station. Old oaks stood there, the leaves rustled underfoot, and the air smelled of damp earth and the distant sea. He sat on a bench, took out a crumpled pack of cigarettes from his pocket, and lit one with trembling hands. Sylvester stopped a few meters away, watching him. In that moment, Alex looked not just tired, he looked broken, as if everything that had kept him afloat had finally shattered. Sylvester walked over and sat beside him, saying nothing. Alex flinched, but didn't get up. You're like that dog that won't quit following, he rasped without looking at Sylvester. And you're like the one running from everything, Sylvester replied calmly. But I'm not the kind to give up. Alex took a drag from his cigarette and exhaled a cloud of smoke. What do you want from me, Sly? I'm not worth your time. Sylvester pulled out the medal and placed it on the bench between them. This is yours. And I want to know why you rejected it. Alex looked at the medal, and his eyes clouded. He was silent for a long time, then spoke softly, as if the words were emerging from deep within. I got it in Iraq. 2004, my platoon got ambushed. I pulled 2 guys out of a burning vehicle, but I didn't make it to the 3rd. He was screaming, and I couldn't get to him. His name was Danny. He was 22. I came home with this medal, and he came home in a coffin. And you know what? His mother told me I should have been the one in his place. Sylvester felt his throat tighten. He knew that pain, not from war, but from life. The guilt that eats at you from the inside until there's nothing left. And you believed her, he asked. Alex clenched his fists. I don't know. But I couldn't keep going. My wife left because I was drinking. I lost my job because I couldn't hold myself together. And now here I am, begging for $10 from strangers. This medal, it's not mine. It belongs to Danny. Sylvester leaned forward, his voice firm but warm. You can't change what happened, but you can decide what happens next. You sold that medal to run away, but it's still yours. Because you fought. And you survived. Alex shook his head. I'm no hero, Sly. I'm nothing. You're wrong. Sylvester cut him off. A hero isn't the one who never falls. A hero is the one who gets up. And I see a fighter in you. You've just forgotten how to fight for yourself. Alex looked at him, and tears glistened in his eyes. He took the medal in his hands, running his finger along its worn edges. And what if I can't? What if I mess everything up again? Then I'll be here to lift you up, Sylvester said. But you have to take the first step. Silence hung between them. The park was filled with sounds, the distant whistle of a train, the laughter of children playing nearby, the rustling of leaves. Alex stood up, holding the medal in his hand. I don't know if I'll make it, but I'll try. For Danny. Sylvester smiled, not with a wide Hollywood grin, but a sincere, human one. That's all I need. The following weeks were not easy. Sylvester brought Alex back to Philadelphia and settled him in the same cottage. He found a place for him in his charity project. Alex started working at a youth boxing gym, teaching the boys the basics of boxing. At first he was quiet, uncertain, but each day his voice grew stronger and his back straighter. The kids, many of whom grew up without fathers, were drawn to him. They didn't see a homeless man. They saw a veteran who knew what it meant to fight. One evening, Sylvester walked into the gym. It smelled of sweat and old gloves, and the dull thud of punches echoed from the ring. Alex stood in the corner, adjusting the bandages on a skinny teenager with curly hair. Keep your elbows up, Tyler, he said. And don't be afraid of the punch. You're stronger than you think. Tyler nodded and smiled. Sylvester walked closer. How's it going? He asked. Alex turned, and for the first time in a long while, there was no shadow in his eyes. Better than I thought. These kids. They remind me that I still have something to give. Sylvester nodded. You're not just giving. You're changing their lives. And your own. Alex smiled, a faint smile, but sincere. Thanks, Sly. I didn't think I'd get here. I knew you would, Sylvester replied, putting a hand on his shoulder. Months passed. One day, Sylvester received a letter. Inside was a photograph. Alex in a new jacket, without a beard, with short hair, standing in front of a group of teenagers with boxing gloves. On the back, written by hand, Sly, I don't know how to thank you, but I'm holding on. For Danny. And for myself. Alex. Sylvester placed the photo on the desk in his office, next to an old Rocky poster. He sat in the chair, listening to the sounds of Philadelphia outside the window, the honking of cars, the laughter of people, the rustling of leaves. He hadn't changed the system, hadn't rewritten the laws, but he had brought one person back to life. And maybe that was a start. And somewhere in Baltimore, an old bench in the park stood empty, waiting for the next traveler looking for his way. And the wind carried the smell of the sea, promising that tomorrow could be better.